Number 4. This one is the one that I see the hardest turn on the kaleidoscope for people to make. And once they do, it gives them the most freedom. Has anybody here either trained in traditional psychotherapy or been to a psychotherapist, or really, I'm seeing some nodding heads. So in therapy, and maybe we could hear a voice we haven't heard from yet, what's one of the first things that they do? Or even if you go see a psychiatrist about your depression or anxiety, or bring someone there, what's one of the first things we do in those professions? Anybody know?
Look at the past.
Yeah, we take a history.
Mhm.
Sharayu says, tell your story, dig the past. Yeah, we take, and it's, you know, not just your narrative, though ultimately psychotherapeutics focuses a lot on the past events, your past feelings. But even in medicine, we're looking at your medical history and your family medical history. And if you look hard enough for something, you'll find it. If you look for a reason in your past for why you feel bad now, we are such creative, imaginative, not just imaginative, but we're creative, correlative geniuses. I'm not saying you imagined the events of your past, but to blame how bad you feel now for them takes imagination and conjuring. What if the way you feel now, or the way your loved ones feel now, and this is really important for the parents in the room who have children who suffer with this and want to blame yourselves for it and how you raised them. I'm telling you, what if it's not because of what happened to you as a child? It's not because of the traumas you've experienced. And believe me, I had every reason in the book. Epigenetic trauma. My grandfather was dismembered in front of, my great grandfather was dismembered in front of my grandfather when he was 12. I had epigenetic trauma out the wazoo. I was kidnapped myself at gunpoint when I was 19, the same age that my best friend was when she was murdered when I was 7. If I wanted to look at life events to explain and justify being depressed and anxious, I had arsenal. I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg. I had a larger than Encyclopedia Britannica volumes of reasons why I should feel bad. And I got really good at arguing for them too. And our paradigm of looking at it looks at it that way. All right, let's talk about your past to heal it so that you can feel better now. But even our allopathic research, really, if we look at it, points us in a different direction. And certainly modern neuroscience. And I'm going to give you that myth busting different direction in a moment. And then we're actually going to do a little fun science and unpack how this works. But we already knew it. You already know it. Because when you put your clothes on for today, did you get dressed for what the weather report was 6 months ago? Did anybody do that? Did you look at what the weather was going to be today before you put your clothes on? I see a lot of nodding heads. The future that we're living toward determines the behaviors of the present moment, not our past life experience. But if we mentally project, which we're capable of doing, and by the way, human beings are some of the few that can do this. If we mentally project the past on the future, then we will recreate it and get dressed for the same thing that happened last year. Neurologically, I'm not saying we do this consciously, but we can consciously change the operating system. If you drove your car looking at the rear view mirror the whole way, what would happen? Genuinely, I mean this. Marilyn's going like this. Jean is going. You'd crash into something eventually, unless it's one of those self-driving cars. Although I did some research on self-driving cars last week and found out maybe we're not actually ready for that to be consumer technology ready yet. Because I see our engineer in the room smiling because there's plenty of crashes and accidents with those cars. Where do we have to look when we're driving? Through the windshields. Well, neurologically, you have, just like you have a fuel and a brakes in the car that is you, you've got your fuel and your brakes, but you also have neurologically your windshield and your rear view mirror. And a lot, when we look at these conditions as mental illness and try to explain the condition either through genetics, epigenetics, I'm not saying these things aren't at play any more than I'm saying neurotransmitters and hormones aren't at play, but they're not the leverage for change. Or past life events, traumatic events. What am I supposed to do with that? I can't change my past. Well, you can, but that's advanced. I can't go back and change the events of the past. So then basically a diagnosis is doomsday if it's caused by something in the past. But what if it's not? What if it's an operating system? And you can change your operating system by changing your heart. What if it's an operating system? An operating system based on how the fuel and the brakes work and based on looking at the rear view mirror, that's an operating system. That's a way of driving. What if you could drive in a different way that worked better for you? It doesn't deny what happened in the past, by the way. It changes your current relationship to it. That's the fourth myth, that these things are caused by our past. That's a disempowering way of looking at it. Unless it's not, and you had a night trauma. I am working with a young woman who experienced violence in her dorm room in her sleep in the middle of the night. She couldn't sleep, so we addressed that incident. So I want to be very careful to say that while I'm sharing these things, they're not a panacea. They're a paradigm shifting change in perspective. It doesn't negate everything else. It expands our way of looking at everything else so we can get better results.